And joining us on World Now to discuss U.S. foreign relations is the President Emeritus, Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes. Good to have you join us.
Nice to be with you again.
So this diplomatic mission by Antony Blinken is coming days after Iran opened its embassy in Riyadh, and also days after Saudi Arabia pledged to further cut oil production. So one wonders what level of impact this meeting will have on already fractious relations between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia.
Well, my feeling is that it can't help but improve the relationship in some ways, as bad as the relationship has become currently. I think it was important that there were some talks, and at least it's a strong start. But I think the U.S. This administration has realized that the world's changing very rapidly, very dramatically, and we can't take for granted what we once took for granted, nor in hindsight should we have. But in any case, I think it's a positive first step. I think it's going to have to be a meeting that begins the rebuilding of trust, and I think there are still some very significant gaps in our understanding of one another and our view of one another.
And is there a sense that the U.S. is losing its influence in the Middle East, and that China now has an advantage?
I think you'd be naive to say that the U.S. isn't losing influence in the Middle East. We've taken some things for granted. I don't see it as a we versus China or U.S. versus China, although I think that's how it's going to be seen by many politicians as well as media. But I think it's a win-win. A win-win for China and the U.S. is possible. I think every nation has the right to reach out to other countries, and clearly it's going to require some very deft diplomacy on the part of the United States to get back into a strong balance and player. I think that China's entry around the world should be expected, and I don't see that it can be or should be stopped. But we've got to find ways to work together. China and the U.S. working together in anywhere, Middle East or elsewhere, is only a positive for the world.
And I know that you say it's a win-win because of the Syria and Yemen question in terms of that deal with Iran being put together by China. But when you also look at the fact that the U.S. has been trying to normalize ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and it's not been successful for a while now, is that really a win-win for the U.S.? Doesn't that push China up that ladder, that world of the world order?
I wouldn't. Israel is, like it or not, a special case. So I don't consider that as a win-win situation for anybody. I think that you're more likely to fear lose the way things are going. I think that certainly the U.S. has seen Israel as one of its best, if not its best allies outside of the U.K. I think it carries a lot of water for Israel at times. That just simply cannot be denied. And I think that the Saudis are key to establishing a peace in the Middle East, particularly between the Palestinians and Israel. Israel has certainly made it more difficult of late regarding its conflict with the Palestinians. So I think the Israel question is a long-term question, as it always has been.
And let's talk generally about the Biden administration and its commitment to the Middle East, because the Biden administration has often been criticized for not having any specific policy or strategy in the Middle East. Is there anything that can be done now to reassure of commitment in that region?
Well, I think that the criticism of the administration is valid. We haven't had a clear, coherent policy to many places around the world, including Africa, frankly. I think we're beginning to move. It's a little slow. Excuse me. Sorry. It's a little slow, but the criticism of a lack of policy is clear. We were caught, I think, flat-handed by China on Iran and Saudi Arabia rapprochement with Iran. And that clearly is not a short-term win if we put everything in terms of winning and losing for the United States.
Mm. Well, we'll see all that this diplomatic mission by Antony Blinken is able to achieve. Thank you so much for talking to us, as always. The President Emeritus, Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the honor.